welcome to Lost in the Warp. We are back. It's been a minute. Lots been going on, but I'm Riley. This is my co-host Ethan.
Hello, how's it going?
And today we're going to talk about not only the topic of this video, which is going to be our Phobos units, but also a recap of everything that's happened lately in the world of Warhammer. We took a break at, depending on how you look at it, either a very good or a very bad time, because a lot has happened since we last were doing a video.
Yeah, we've both been moving across the country in different directions, so we're a couple time zones apart now, but we're starting to get settled in, which, again, quick disclaimer, our audio quality may not be as great for this video because we are still getting settled in, but we're making it work, and as we go, things will just get better as we learn this new system that we're setting up with. This is our first episode going over Discord, so should be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So we both just moved, and we're making it work. So let's quickly cover a lot of the things that have happened in the Warhammer universe and everything Games Workshop has been up to in the past month and a half since we last had a video.
Yeah, so I think the biggest ones, at least, have been the new Codex releases for Guard and Eldar. The Codexes may not be out at time of recording, but we do have a lot of previews into what they're going to look like, all the new models that have come out. I know I personally am very excited for the Guard one. The Hammer of the Emperor will be my new love child going forward. I like me my Guard tanks. But
yes, you do.
I've been excited seeing all the new Eldar stuff come out too. I know that they may or may not be the boogeyman right now, but it's interesting to see.
I'm just happy they have model refreshes. They've needed that for a long time, and they look amazing.
It's good to see new Warp Spiders and a lot of new Phoenix Lords. Even though I am an avid Xenos hater, it's good to see people getting the updated models that they deserve.
Yeah. Hopefully, my Death Watch will get Primaris scale, because it seems like GW can't get rid of them because they just won LVO.
Yeah.
Ooh, yippee.
I remember I was watching the live stream of those games. I watched the semifinals, the quarterfinals, and the actual final match for the Death Watch. And the announcer said it correctly. It was a masterclass of how to play the army. It was amazing to watch.
The Mark is just a menace to society, and he is way, way, way too good. However, I will be claiming this as a victory for myself as well, because Death Watch.
It was really interesting. I was looking at the lists for Death Watch of all, somebody on Reddit ranked them, and they listed his in the meh category.
Well, it was weird because he had the speeder.
Everyone was like, everyone was like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
But then he really showed how important those things can be.
Yeah. It, like you said, and like the announcer said, it was just a masterclass of optimizing game mechanics, and especially that last game. I feel a little bit bad for that Ultramarine player, but I don't, because Ultramarines. But it was just a stomping.
Yeah,
he really hit his stride in that final game and really showed how good of a player he is and how much potential Death Watch can have, which may cause a nerf, but it is what it is. That was still great to watch.
The only thing I can see getting nerfed based off of those games is the Terminator squads. We touched on this in our Terminator episodes a little bit, but they carry those Cyclone missile launchers, the ability to have 3 and not be costed that much higher than a normal Terminator squad. I can see those getting nerfed in points in the next update, but who knows? We'll get to that when we get to it.
The Death Watch has special armory stuff, so doing that would be heretical. How else are you going to kill the Xenos or whatever else you're up against? Come on.
Yeah. That being said, though, we do also have some interesting things on the horizon Codex-wise. I know we mentioned Guard and Eldar getting their drops. Guard is pretty much out at this point. Eldar on the horizon. But we also have codexes for a couple other things. They're finally finishing out all of the Chaos Legions that are deity specific. So Death Guard, Thousand Suns. The
World Eaters was last year.
World Eaters is getting their codex in this same, so they're doing them all at once, because they're also releasing the Emperor's Children.
Ah, yes, the diddlers are back.
The legion
Uh,
that exists to make everyone else in the Warhammer universe uncomfortable.
oh, yes. I
Sorry,
don't
Drakari, you're
know.
not even close.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
You're a little on the other side of uncomfortable.
yeah, but yeah,
They're
Emperor's.
just mean and gross. Emperor's children are committing crimes.
But
So,
they are back. We have a new Fulgrim revealed. We have now seen an updated Lucius, new Noise Marines, Master
uh,
Cacophonist, a couple of other different
yep.
battle line units. I'm really excited to see what they do with Emperor's Children Codex, and how they continue to make it unique, because what they've shown so far seems really cool.
Yes, yes. It's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of Emperor's Children players, similar to when the World Eaters came back. They got a massive influx of players. So
Yeah, I was just
it's going to shake things up a bit, and I think that's going to be fun.
so
Uh,
yeah, there's plenty of things going on in the world of new models and new codexes. It's a very exciting time
mhm.
to be into Warhammer.
Yes,
I think
yes.
that I'm excited for everything. I haven't really seen anything I'm not excited for personally, but I think that kind of wraps up all of the what's been going on since we left. So I think,
Yeah, I would say so.
yeah,
So I think now is time to dive into what we're actually here to talk about today,
yeah,
which is our Mark 10 Phobos armored units.
yeah. So
So start with the lore. Go
yeah, we'll
ahead,
just
Ethan,
dive
take it
right
away.
in. As you've already mentioned, the armor is the Mark X or Mark 10 Phobos armor. Another slight variant to it is the Reaver armor, which we'll get into a little bit minute later. But
Mhm.
essentially, what we're looking at here is a slimmed down design of the Mark 10 Tacticus armor that we talked about in our videos with all the intercessor variants. It's just a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, built for movement and speed over that high level of protection. Um,
Speed.
yeah, we kind of see it. It's If you look at a picture of the armor, you can definitely tell it's built for more mobility. It sacrifices. I love this term. I just learned somebody called the Space Marine armor this earlier. They got rid of the bell bottom jeans.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's definitely like slimmer. You don't have those huge thick plates and padding. You have more streamlined because these guys are supposed to be stealthy. They're supposed to be quick, jumping
exactly.
over things. All yeah. So
Yeah, and you can tell it's definitely more of a stealth slash speed variant. All of the servo motors that we've come to know in Mark 10 Tacticus armor that help movement for the Marine inside, these servo motors are equipped with noise dampeners to essentially make them silent.
yay.
They don't make the same amount of noise just for movement, so they are much more well suited to the stealth mission. And even though
Yeah.
they do that, they are not sacrificing the complete environmental seal that other Mark 10 variants offer. So it's still extremely effective in hostile climates and can still protect the wearer in just about any scenario.
Well, yeah. I mean, just because you're stealthy doesn't mean you can be inhaling poison atmosphere or whatever it is you're doing.
Exactly.
You got to be safe too.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so this type of armor is typically used by your vanguard forces, your eliminators, your infiltrators. We mentioned reavers earlier, and we'll get into them as well. Stuff that's meant to be stealthy, sneaky, kind of bouncing around, doing some shenanigans. But it isn't used by scouts. They have their own thing. It's not power armor. It looks similar, not the same thing.
Yeah, it's we'll
And
get into that eventually, but
yeah,
it's very important to note that there's a very big difference between the vanguard forces of, say, eliminators, infiltrators, reavers, incursors. Those are very different than scouts. Even though they are still vanguard
yes,
forces, scouts is more of a rank than anything else
yes.
because you're still an initiate, you're still earning your power armor. So we'll talk more about them in a separate video, but they do wear a different armor than you would expect.
Okay, so this is my favorite part of this armor. The Invictor Warsuit is a Phobos unit. It
It
is
is.
a gigantic mech that someone rides in that is wearing stealth armor, technically.
It
So,
is technically a Vanguard insertion unit.
Yes, it does have a scout move. It does have that kind of fun stuff, but it is a big war suit, you know.
It's
So
a
it's kind
dreadnought
of
that's
funny.
not a dreadnought.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
just for the sake of talking about the armor itself today, we're going to talk about the Invictor Warsuit in a separate video, but it is cool to note that it is utilized by a Marine wearing Phobos armor.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a little fun one.
Yeah.
I think now we'll get into weapons.
Yeah, so
Uh,
the weapons
Go for it.
that are employed by Phobos armor wearing units depend greatly on their battlefield roles. We've kind of
Yes.
named a lot of them already, but the four main categories are Eliminators, Reavers, Infiltrators, and Incursors. All of them have different responsibilities on the battlefield and different roles that they play. Let's start with Eliminators, though. The Eliminators are your standard sniper. This is your...
Sniper.
They have a couple different weapon options that they have in their arsenal. As most Astartes have a bolt pistol, these do as well. But they swap out their standard bolt rifle for a bolt sniper rifle, which is essentially exactly what you've come to expect from the Mark II pattern call bolter. But it has a much extended barrel, and it actually has a shoulder stabilized stock on it, which most bolt guns don't have. So they are actually able to be stabilized and used at long range with high velocity.
Yeah, and the next one. This is typically going to be carried by the leader of the unit, the sergeant. Is your instigator bolt carbine. This one is not as long range as the sniper rifle, but it allows for it's a suppressed weapon, so it does a little 3-round burst, gets things done. It's kind of the in between your pistol and your sniper, that mid range, but still maintaining stealth type weapon.
Exactly. They also have access to the las fusil, which
Yes.
I love the las fusil. I hate it when it's played against me, but it's essentially a man portable las cannon. It's not as powerful because it needs to be a little bit smaller, but it's a giant laser that will cook your head off from 3 miles away.
Yes.
It's pretty impressive.
This is good.
There's not really much more to say about that other than the fact that it is just a giant laser.
It just punches holes in things and causes problems.
Exactly. Eliminators also employ some melee weapons because they are still a Space Marine. They do still get into close combat fights even if they're trying to avoid it. And essentially they have the standard issue combat blades, your monomolecular edged knives that Space Marines tend to carry. Nothing too fancy here.
They're called Eliminators. They're snipers. They snipe. They stay at range. That's their goal.
That is their
When we get into the tabletop portion, we'll talk about some of the other shenanigans they can do.
Because there are plenty.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So next, we have Reavers. From a lore perspective, I love Reavers.
Reavers in the lore
are terrorists.
They're terrorists. They literally have helmets that are fashioned with skull masks. And this is where the difference between Mark X Phobos and Mark X Reaver armor comes into play, because it's basically the same except for the skull mask, and Reaver armor has an enlarged left pauldron for better protection in melee, so they can actually charge in headlong and sow fear.
Yeah, I mean their goal is to sprint at the enemy as fast as possible, scare the crap out of them, and then stab them.
Exactly.
They are meant to get into they get in fist fights and they win.
Yeah.
That's their whole goal.
Their whole idea is they either hide out and wait for a target or drop in from an aerial vehicle and just wreak havoc, instill fear in a population or in an enemy. And they're very Night Lords coded.
They are.
I think
Night Lords and like Space Wolves, but Space Wolves have their own thing with hounds and
absolutely.
But it's
I think
similar.
In terms of their weaponry, though, they don't have as much of a variety as the Eliminators do, but they do still have some very powerful weaponry. And they have bolt carbines, which is essentially a shortened bolt rifle with a foregrip attached to it. It doesn't have as good a range as a bolt rifle, but it is much more mobile and still has the devastating power of the mass reactive shells that we've come to love from bolters.
Yes, we love grenade launchers that are treated like they're just normal guns.
Yes. They do also carry heavy bolt pistols. In the lore, they're called special issue bolt pistols because for some reason they couldn't have just written them as heavy bolt pistols, even though that's exactly what
They have special mask. They get special pistols. You know,
Yeah,
they're special
That's
guys.
exactly what it is. It's a heavy bolt pistol. It shoots harder and heavier than a standard bolt pistol. This is what most of the reavers in a unit will carry. Generally, your sergeants will carry the bolt carbine as a privilege of rank.
Yes.
That does it for their ranged weapons. They do have some pretty good melee weapons, I will say.
They got the close combat weapons, which is pretty standard. It's just a couple knives.
Exactly.
But then they have the combat knives.
So
And these are fun. Big knife. Yeah, this is where the whole terror troop, really good in close combat, comes into play, because they just have these big knives that are better for penetrating through armor, hacking and slashing things, much better than the standard blade that a Space Marines issue.
it's essentially how guardsmen carry battle knives, catechins carry butcher's knives.
Precisely.
This is the kind of direct equivalent for that from Space Marines. We'll talk about it more on the tabletop, but they've recently gotten some love that makes me very happy. But Reavers overall, again, they are literally terrorists that charge in and use fear and shock tactics to make it happen.
Yeah, they like to cause problems.
Yeah, next up on our list, we have infiltrators.
Also problem causers.
Also problem causers. These are your sabotage specialists. They use a device called an Omni Scrambler to disrupt enemy communications and, intercept, disrupt, all of the above, gather intel, and, really cause problems in an enemy's back line.
These are meant to be your, spies deployed behind enemy lines.
Yes, exactly.
Just kind of stirring the pot and smiling while they do it, because they're making life difficult for the enemy.
Yes, exactly. I didn't actually know this, but it makes sense now that I've looked at their data sheet. Infiltrators are also trained as medicae, so they are the squad medics and can even be brought up to act as apothecaries for the chapter if situations are not going the way that you want them to and potentially your apothecary goes down. They are trained in the same, arts that an apothecary gets trained in.
Huh.
So
That's fun.
I never knew that before. I always thought they were just spies, but it makes sense because when you're behind enemy lines, you have to be able to take care of yourself.
At least a little bit, yeah.
Exactly.
For their ranged weapons, they have the same bolt pistol that everyone has, but they also have the marksman bolt carbine, which take bolter, give it slightly more range because it has a better sight.
Exactly.
Marksman bolt carbine. It's nothing incredibly special, but it fits well for that kind of scout/spy role.
Exactly.
Give them a little more range, keep some distance, but allow them to poke and prod at the enemy and cause a little shenanigans.
Exactly. Allow them to set up where they need to set up to really get in there and disrupt enemy communications while still being able to defend themselves effectively.
Yes.
They also have the same standard issue combat blades that most other intercessors or any of the standard Space Marines get, just to continue kind of that theme.
And now we have our final of the four main units we're going to talk about, incursors. So these guys are your data specialists on the battlefield. They have what is called the Divinator class Auspex arrays and Oculus bolt carbines that basically allow them to scan the battlefield and detect anything and everything around them, which also helps them when they're fighting, either at range, but especially in close quarters. They know what's around them, what's coming, all that type of stuff. They don't really get surprised.
Exactly. I had no knowledge of incursors in the lore. I knew they were a unit that existed on the tabletop because they
Hmm.
were a secondary build option for the Infiltrators box. I had
Hmm.
never really seen many people run them. I didn't really know what they were about. But
They
finding out
look cool though because they
they
got the
do.
RoboCop lens.
Oh, they look really cool. But finding out, they
Yeah.
have all of these divinator auspexes and bolt carbines that are built specially for data gathering. Like, it's actually really cool to listen and figure out, like, hey, they're not just a secondary build option on the back of a box that no one's heard about. They're actually a real thing that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rare that eat what I'm about to say, but it's rare that the Imperium would be wasteful in assigning something a battlefield role. Like it has a purpose,
Exactly.
at least when it comes to Space Marines. With Guard, throw
Eh,
more people at it, see what happens.
penal legions
Um,
exist for a reason.
yes.
But moving into
So,
their
yeah, go ahead.
ranged weapons here, we've already talked about the Oculus bolt carbine. It's essentially a standard bolt carbine that we've talked about previously, but it has an extremely advanced optic on it that collects the data surrounding the bearer and essentially feeds that information to their HUD and to the centralized battle network to allow for better enemy tracking and just battlefield awareness for both the bearer and other units nearby. It also
Yes,
enables the bearer to fight in complete darkness with no visibility.
that's freaking cool.
One of the tactics that incursors often use is deploying smoke grenades and walking through with their Oculus bolt carbines and knowing exactly where the enemy is without being seen.
Oh my gosh. Okay, awesome.
It's kind of
Terrifying,
scary.
but awesome.
They do also carry bolt pistols, and instead of just having one combat blade, they have two. If they get
Ah,
into melee combat, they pull out a second blade, and
two knives.
yep, blades akimbo, just slicing and dicing. It's pretty fun.
Uh, yeah. So that covers weapons for like the lore side of weapons for our four main units. Now we're going to talk war gear. Across the board, everyone has frag grenades and crack grenades. We've talked about those at length before.
If you're interested in learning more
Yeah.
about frag and crack grenades, you can check out our intercessor video, our very first episode, where we kind of go into that a little bit more in detail.
Yeah. For the eliminators, their special war gear is, I'm going to butcher this, chameleoline cloak.
Pretty close.
Chameleon type thing, but it's their cloak.
Exactly.
It's basically, if you look at the model or a picture of them, they're like a sniper. Instead of a ghillie suit, they have this cloak that refracts the light and bends the colors and everything around to basically make them invisible and match whatever area they're in. Think active camouflage from any video game franchise that has something like that.
Yeah. And it's important to note you're not actually fully invisible, but
No.
unless you know what you're looking for, you're not going to be able to spot someone who's using a chameleon cloak.
Again, like think Halo active camouflage. It looks a little off if you know what you're looking for, but if you're just scanning, you're not going to notice because it's refracting everything around, just making it
Exactly.
very difficult to see.
And chameleon cloaks are really cool because chameleon line isn't the cloak itself, it's actually a material that's woven into the cloak. And so it's essentially just a chemical compound that is woven into the fabric of this cloak that just has this refractive property.
Very cool.
So the Eliminators don't really have that much cool war gear. Most of their stuff comes from their weapons. The Chameleon line is
Yeah.
cool, but Reavers, on the other hand, they get
Oh
kitted
boy.
out pretty good. They've got some fun stuff.
Oh, yes, they do. The Reavers have shot grenades. So, we have frag, we have crack, we also have flashbang. Ah, terror, you're blind. Boom, knife. That's pretty much it.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
your standard urban combat, throw in the flashbang, go in and kill everyone. Like, it's very cool that I didn't know that shot grenades existed in 40k. I thought they just, had their frag and crack grenades and called it a day.
Mhm.
But no, they actually do still have flashbangs like a conventional military would, which is very cool.
Yes, and it fits for the Reavers quite well.
Oh, it absolutely does. They're very much shock and awe terror troops.
Yes.
They also have grapnel launchers, So just in case they weren't cool enough, they get grappling hooks.
I'm fairly certain that these guys are all just their own individual Batman.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Like, they're just zipping around the battlefield, grappling onto buildings, flying over it, and then their grav chute, in other words, Batman's cape, allowing them for aerial insertion and basically gliding down instead of face planting onto the ground. They are insanely mobile.
If you've played Space Marine 2, this is your Vanguard class. They take their grappling hook, they go out. They don't necessarily use it to grapple onto a person, but they do use it to zip around terrain very quickly. I mean, I imagine they do war crimes. They've probably shot a grappling hook into a person.
Yeah, they're terrorists. They don't care.
Yeah. So, moving on to a more cheery topic, we also have infiltrators that have their own special grenades that are just smoke grenades. It's pretty self-explanatory. Mm-hmm. They just are a grenade that generates smoke so that they can give themselves some concealment. Yeah, and this is great for them because they're the kind of spy, cause problems from a distance type, which when you combine your smoke grenade with the Omni Scramble, which is this electronic warfare tool, typically they have it mounted on a power pack of their armor, and this is what really allows them to scramble Vox and other signals, primarily just cause problems for enemy communication. And when you have that in your smoke, you're going to be hard to pin down. Exactly. Our incursors also get smoke grenades, which makes sense given their tactic of throwing smokes and then rushing in with their special weapons to deal massive damage from inside the smoke. But they also have, as we previously mentioned, the Divinator class Auspex, which is essentially just a boosted version of the Auspex that normal infantry are equipped with. Basically, it's better for active and passive scanning, so it is more able to detect things that maybe a standard Auspex wouldn't be able to detect. For example, someone wearing a chameleon cloak. Yes. So, yeah, your incursors, they're the data gatherers, but they can also lay down some hate and cause some problems, which is where the haywire mind comes into play. If you look at the models, you'll see that sometimes they are carrying a briefcase of doom that is just this anti-vehicle mine that causes an electrophantasmic explosion. It banishes machine spirits. It's absurd. So not only does it, take out your vehicle with an explosion, it also, there's no set radius for it, but surrounding enemy war gear that relies on a machine spirit to operate is going to go down for a little while because it banishes the machine spirit from that piece of war gear. Somewhere, the ad mecha crying right now. So some fun facts. The Raven Guard. All these units have Raven Guard written all over them. The Raven Guard adores Phobos armor. Oh yeah, they're the sneaky special guys. Every single company of the Raven Guard uses it, especially the first company, which you would generally attribute Terminator armor to. But the Raven Guard being the Raven Guard, they like their sneaky shenanigans. They do. Phobos armor. They're all of the different roles that the armor can fill. It makes perfect sense. It's perfect for them. It absolutely is. Yeah. Another big fun fact for all our Space Marine 2 enjoyers, I always screw up his name. I want to say Acheron. Captain Acheron. Okay, Captain Acheron of Space Marine 2. He is wearing a Phobos armor, and the official paint job for it on the GW shop or on the model box is the Captain in Phobos armor. It is designed to look, or Captain Acheron is designed to look like that, which is kind of cool. Which, if you've ever seen the model, it's a terrible model. A lot of people love it. I hate it. It just looks so bad, but it very much is Captain Acheron. I'll say yes, but the model's been around longer than him as a character. Oh, him as a character looks great. Yeah, he's my beautiful Scottish king. I love that man. And, to me, it redeems the model a bit. Okay, I think that covers all of our lore. Yeah, so I think
So,
we're
tabletop time.
yeah, we're ready to talk about the tabletop. So the first thing that we need to just get out of the way with these units, they all have the same movement, toughness, saving throw, wounds, leadership, and objective control characteristics. They're all the same.
They all have the 6-inch move, T4, 3-up armor save. There is no invul. 2 wounds a pop, 6-up leadership, and 1 OC.
Yep.
Like we just said, across the board, they're all the same. If you're in Phobos armor, you are doing this for your stat line.
When you get to your eliminators, though, they are a 3-man squad, and that is as many as you can take them in. And when you do that, you get an eliminator sergeant and 2 eliminators. They each can have different war gear options, but the big difference between them is the eliminator sergeant can trade out his bolt sniper rifle with an instigator bolt carbine. None of the other eliminators have that option. They can all go for las fusils, but only the sergeant can go for the instigator bolt carbine.
Yes, and we will, once we get into the abilities on tabletop, we'll get into why that weapon is so important.
Absolutely.
But generally, 3 models, 85 points. They're snipers.
As we mentioned, they can all trade in their bolt sniper rifle for the las fusil, and they all are equipped with bolt pistols and close combat weapons. Pretty close to the lore here. I mean, they're pretty much right on that line.
They work in small teams.
Exactly.
And that's how they are on the tabletop.
Exactly. Moving into Reavers, they are 5 models for 80 points or 10 models for 160 points. Again, this is, you get 1 Reaver Sergeant and either 4 or 9 Reavers, depending on if you take the large block or the small block. Their war gear selections are relatively simple. The Reavers can have the bolt carbine if they would like, but they sacrifice their big combat knives for doing that. The sergeant, however, can take both. He can have the bolt carbine and the big combat knife.
Of course, he's just cool like that. And they all have the grav shoots. Effectively, they all get the grapnel launcher benefits. On the models, I think there's a way to just make sure that the squad has it.
Yeah, I mean,
it just allows for more movement.
Nothing too complicated here. Relatively standard points cost for a Space Marine squad, keeping it at 80 points, which stands up to the intercessors, feels good.
And these guys, like, okay, you're paying standard amount of points to have some very mobile and effective melee unit. It can be worth it if that's what you need in the army.
Exactly. They're not super effective in melee against tougher targets, but they do have the ability to do something.
You're going to send these guys at the horde.
Exactly.
Clear whatever is being used to screen.
And because they are issued with the grav shoot, they are relatively good as secondary monkeys from turn 2 onwards.
Yep.
So that definitely does help. Moving on, we do have the infiltrators next, which these are a little bit more expensive. 5 models for an infiltrator squad is 100 points and 10 is 200. Just for what they can take as the squad, you have 1 infiltrator sergeant and 4 to 9 infiltrators. They all have the same thing. They all have a marksman bolt carbine, a bolt pistol, and a close combat weapon. Very simple. I like it. Very, very standard.
So now we're going to talk about the incursors. For them, 5 models is 80 points, 10 models is 160. Pretty average.
Mm-hmm.
The makeup of the squad is going to be 1 incursor sergeant and 4 to 9 incursors. They all have the Oculus bolt carbine, bolt pistol, and paired combat blades. These guys are pretty standard as far as points and their loadout. There's not too much to switch around with them, which makes it kind of convenient when you're assembling them.
That gets through the equipment that they could take on the tabletop. Let's dive a little bit more into these weapons, though. Starting with the eliminators, the bolt sniper rifle. It's okay. It's not bad at all. It's got a 36-inch range, only 1 attack, but it's hitting on a 3, and it has 5 strength with 2 armor penetration and 3 damage. Already, that's a pretty decent sniper profile. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's going to be wounding anything that's, not elite infantry and, is standard infantry or lower on at least a 3. And if it's elite infantry, maybe a 4.
And this is great for trying to pick out leaders.
Exactly.
Because, yes, you have one shot per weapon, but let's say you have 3 snipers, sending them all 3 at one guy. More than likely, 1 or 2 of those is going to get through. And most leaders cannot survive 6 damage.
And
Like,
that
if it's a
does bring
really
up,
beefy one.
at least with these, that does bring up an interesting point. Because a lot of leaders that you're going to come across are going to be 3 wounds or more. So for your more standard leaders like commissars or cadre fireblades for Tau, those kinds of things, they're going to be somewhere around 3 wounds, relatively low toughness with not great saves. So this kind of bolt sniper rifle style is going to be very effective against those, especially when you take into account that it has the heavy keyword and also precision to allow it to hit. The heavy is important because it essentially takes some of the risk out of shooting these. You go from hitting 2/3 of the time to hitting almost all of the time, unless you roll a 1. So that can be huge, and it could mean the difference between having a dead leader or not. So I generally tend to like these, even if they are a little bit swingy. Sometimes it can feel bad, but when it works, it feels good.
Yeah, and we'll get into this when we get to abilities, but the heavy keyword on these guys, in combination with the way the instigator bolt carbine works, is so helpful.
It really is.
Because you're not sacrificing heavy when you use the instigator ability, which we'll get into.
Yes. That being said, you also have the las fusel, and this is where taking out those heavier characters comes into play.
Yes.
Because this is virtually the same up until we get to strength. Because the strength bumps from 5 to 9, it has AP 3 and D6 damage.
See, I love that, but I know myself, and whenever I roll a D6 for damage, I'm rolling a 1 or a 2. It happens every time.
It does happen a lot. These are great for taking out your more heavy-hitting characters, like, for example, as Base Marine Chapter Master if you're facing one of them, or, like I just recently got done playing a game against the new detachment for Chaos Space Marines, the Creations of Bile. This would have been perfect for popping Fabius Bile himself, because he doesn't actually have an invuln save. But they're more likely to get through because they have that higher AP, they have that higher strength, you're more likely to wound. It's just, these feel very good.
Yeah, and they also have utility as a couple shots to maybe help whittle down a vehicle.
Exactly.
It's not a guarantee, but yeah, if you get one through, you have the potential to do 6 damage to a vehicle, which is not inconsequential.
Exactly. And they also have the heavy keyword, so they can be hitting on 2s as well. The Instigator Bolt Carbine, I'm actually kind of amazed at how decent the Instigator Bolt Carbine is. It is
it's not bad.
Hitting on 3s. It doesn't have heavy, but it does still have the precision. So 24-inch range, only 1 attack still, it's still hitting on 3s. Strength 4, AP 2, damage 2. This feels very good for just popping a single Space Marine.
Yes, and I think the big thing with this specific weapon is its ability.
Yes,
the only reason you're going to take it is for the ability.
Yeah, because if you're taking this, you're using the ability because you are sacrificing potentially the ability to have another las fusel or bolt sniper rifle with this.
Yes.
They do, like we said, they also have bolt pistols, 12-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Pretty standard profile. Feels just about right for what it is.
It's a bolt pistol.
Same with the close combat weapons, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Nothing fancy, it's just a knife with a big man behind it. Feels just about right.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the weaponry for the Reavers now.
Yeah, so the Reavers have their special issue. Bolt pistol. Yeah. 1 attack, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1, with precision. This is kind of nice because they're the terror troop. They get in, they do their damage straight to the leader, which is helpful. And when you have a couple of them, you're not going against big things. These guys, these Reavers, they're going to be targeting your chaff, but trying to cull it as quickly as possible. And by starting with the leaders, it helps because
It does.
all of their weapons, except for the close combat weapon, have precision.
And let's be honest, you're not taking Reavers with close combat weapons. You're taking them with the combat
No,
knife because the bolt
yeah,
carbine isn't nearly as good at wounding because it does have longer range and it has one more attack, but it loses a pip of AP. So it
yeah,
realistically, you're trading a little bit of range for armor penetration and one more
yeah.
attack for
Like
armor
you might
penetration.
throw the bolt carbine on the sergeant, but that's it.
Yeah, like personally, I would throw a bolt carbine on the sergeant just because he can still have the combat weapon or the combat knife to go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't really know if it's worth it for the entire squad to take them.
Speaking of this bolt carbine, just to get it out there, 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3, strength 4, AP 0, 1 damage with precision. Like we said, give one to the sergeant. You probably don't want him anywhere else in the squad because you really want those combat knives.
Exactly.
Combat knives have 4 attacks each, hitting on 3, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1 with precision.
I know. Compare
So,
this with your close combat weapon, which they also have the ability to take. 3 attacks for the close combat weapon, no armor penetration, everything else is the same. And they also
yeah,
don't have precision. Like it's just
yeah,
it's not even close. The
yeah.
combat knife is the better pick by far. You gain
Mm-hmm.
precision, you gain an additional attack, and you gain AP. It's just better. With that, let's move on to infiltrators. Just to get it out of the way, the bolt pistol and the close combat weapon, nothing has changed. The only thing that they have that's different is the marksman bolt carbine, which is essentially a bolter that has heavy. That's really what it is. It's the standard
Yeah.
profile that we've seen: 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1, and has heavy. It's really not that different from the standard intercessor bolt rifle, but again, you're not taking infiltrators for their shooting or their melee, you're taking them for their abilities.
You just summed it up. They're taking it for the abilities, which we'll get to shortly.
Yes. And incursors, almost exactly the same. They also have bolt pistols. Their paired combat blades are essentially a combination of the Reaver combat knives and the close combat weapon. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1, but they have sustained hits.
Oh yeah,
So they
a flurry of knives.
exactly. It's a blender in there. That's the idea,
Yeah.
and that very much tracks. They do still have their Oculus bolt carbine though. 24-inch range, 2 attacks, 3 up ballistic skill, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. What you'd expect from a bolter. The big difference though is it has assault and it ignores cover, which can be
Yeah.
huge when you're targeting those lesser strength units that generally have worse saves. Like for example, a guardsman that has a standard 5-up save that is maybe relying on cover to get a 4-up.
Well, and it makes sense from a lore perspective because they know what's all around them. Through their HUD, they're able to see everything.
Exactly.
So ignoring cover and assault, like they're gonna move and they're gonna cause problems. They're gonna fight really effectively.
Exactly.
So it makes sense for them.
Moving into the
So-
war gear section.
Yes.
The Eliminators, we don't actually have anything for war gear to talk about them. The Chameleon Line Cloak is the best thing that we can talk about in terms of war gear. It's not an actual option, but this is what grants them the stealth keyword,
Mhm.
which is very
Yeah.
good because it gives them -1 to hit when you're in ranged weapons. So that can mean the difference between, a 4 hitting on a 5 or a 3 hitting on a 4. It could be a major difference.
There's not too much to talk about for eliminators that we haven't covered yet. For Reavers, we have the grapnel launcher, which this one's fun because it allows them to ignore vertical distance when moving, which makes them, holy crap, he's on the roof. Oh my gosh, he's in my face. They just move. They don't have to worry about going around, going through, going up and down. They fly over things effectively.
Essentially what it does is it allows them to take terrain that isn't breachable and turn it into breachable.
Yes.
So they can just waltz right through this solid concrete wall and all of a sudden they're in your face.
Yes, flashbang, knife, dead. They're spooky like that. They also have the grab shoots, which give them the deep strike keyword, which is always helpful, like we talked about earlier. They can kind of do some uppy downy shenanigans starting turn 2.
Yep.
You can pull them in and out.
It's great for turning them into a secondary monkey. So you can set them up in deep strike, and they may not be on the board turn 1, but they can get there. They can do some, if you have some secondaries that require actions on edges, they can do that.
Next, we have the infiltrators. This is kind of where we start to see some of the differences. While their shooting profile wasn't amazing, here's where some of that cost comes from.
Yes.
They have the Helix Gauntlet, or the ability to take it. And if they do, the whole unit has a 6-up Feel No Pain. That's not inconsequential. Feel No Pains are nice.
Especially when you pair it with the Infiltrator Comms Array. Essentially, this allows you to roll a dice after the unit has been targeted with a stratagem to gain that command point back.
On a 5-up, 1 CP back.
Yes, it is a 5-up. It's not great odds, but any chance that you have to farm a command point is a good chance to take.
Anything that modifies how much CP you have and makes it better is always helpful.
It's always worth it to have, and that's just one of the reasons that they're more expensive.
Now we're going to go over the incursors real quick. Their one big war gear option is the Haywire Mine. It's just a once per battle ability, but you can select an enemy within 3 inches, and on a 2-up, you deal D3 mortal wounds, and if it's a vehicle, it's 2D3.
Yeah.
So that can be pretty darn helpful. Good utility. It is only once per battle, but sometimes being able to just throw around some mortals can make a huge difference.
It absolutely can. This is essentially for them a free use of grenades, and potentially a very devastating use of grenades.
Oh yeah.
The grenade stratagem is very powerful already, but this is just another thing that makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see something on the Haywire Mine that dealt with the fact that it banishes machine spirits. I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't have anything to, talk about that. If the affected target was a vehicle, it's at -1 to hit or something. Just something to talk about that.
Yeah, for the next turn, it is maybe -1 to hit, reduce the movement a little bit, something like that.
Exactly.
That would have been really cool and flavorful.
Exactly, and it would have fit a little bit better with the lore. Right now, it just feels like they're Kazarkin with extra steps, because this is another thing that Kazarkin have the exact same thing. Let's move into their abilities.
Yeah.
Really
Okay.
Why infiltrators are important.
Okay, I'm going to go on a tangent here.
I fully am expecting you to, but I'm going to start with Eliminators so you can prepare yourself.
Well, Eliminators is part of my tangent.
Okay, fine. Well, we'll start.
Okay.
The Infiltrators, their abilities. Part of their abilities, they have the Infiltrator, Stealth, and Grenade keywords, allowing them to use the grenade stratagem. They can also infiltrate, so they can set up anywhere on the battlefield outside of 9 of an enemy deployment zone, and enemy models before the battle round starts. Very helpful for establishing board position early on, maybe taking a no man's land objective. Feels very good with their Vanguard ability. I mentioned Stealth as well, so they are -1 to hit in ranged combat, which is nice. Their actual abilities, though, this is where it gets important. We have 2 that make a difference. There's the Reposition Under Covering Fire, which is all to do with the Instigator Bolt Carbine.
I love this thing.
Carbine. Yes, I love this thing. Essentially, in your shooting phase, after this unit is shot, if it contains an Eliminator Sergeant equipped with the Bolt Carbine, this unit can make a normal move. If it does so, until the end of the turn, it is not eligible to declare a charge. This is why you take the Instigator Bolt Carbine, because it allows the unit to stay still, take use of their heavy, and then move after they've shot.
So yes, it's amazing. It's glorious. It's beautiful. Because one, have the ability to reposition if you need to. You don't need to make that move. You can make that move.
Yes,
so
exactly.
In utility, it's something you can use. It benefits the heavy because you're not moving during a movement phase. So next time they shoot, they will be able to have benefit of their heavy again. It also works off of the Mark the Target ability they have, which if they stayed stationary, their attacks gain devastating wounds.
Oh, so I never even thought about that. So it
Yes,
really
so
makes it
basically you're
just that
getting
much better.
free movement. Yeah, you're getting all this movement that doesn't take away from your heavy, doesn't take away from your dev wounds off of Mark the Target.
So you're
It's
really
just,
getting the best of both worlds. You're getting to stay still, but
yeah,
you're still getting to move.
exactly. You're just moving basically not during your movement phase, so you can't charge. Oh, whoa, whoop de doo. If you're charging with these guys, things have really gone wrong. So this weapon, the Instigator Bolt Carbine, makes so much utility for these guys without the drawback of their other abilities and their other keywords. It's so nice. I love it. I run a squad of eliminators with two snipers, the Instigator, and then I also have an attached Phobos Librarian because he gives the 12-inch bubble of you can't shoot me unless you're in this bubble, which makes them that much more survivable. It's kind of painful sometimes for the enemy because I'm just sitting there in the back corner or middle of the map because infiltrators just popping characters left and right.
That's awesome.
It's so fun. I love these abilities on these guys.
Yeah.
Okay, tangent done.
The Eliminators, they feel like their abilities really encapsulate that Vanguard shoot, move, communicate.
They're expert snipers.
They're expert snipers. It works so well. I really love how they've encapsulated that. It feels very good with lore. Let's move into the Reaver's abilities though. Just some keywords they have. They have Scout for 6 inches, meaning before the battle starts they can move 6 inches for free, which is very useful. It may allow you to take an objective early. Well, not necessarily take an objective early, but get into position to take an objective, or maybe deny
or screen
something. Exactly, screen somebody out. They do have grenades, and this is something I never realized. They have the smoke keyword. So there is a stratagem that is mostly associated with vehicles, that is smoke grenades, that allows you to be -1 to hit and gain the benefit of cover. I always thought it was just for vehicles, but no. The Reaver squad has it, the Infiltrator squad has it, and the Incursor squad has it.
Well, of course, we're going to throw down smoke and then run at you.
But it works really well with their lore. They all have some need for smoke grenades. They all have equipped it in some way, shape, or other in the lore, so it really just makes sense.
Yeah, it's awesome for them. Like it works and it benefits them because they're still just Space Marines. So they're going to be a little squishy. No matter how fast they move, if it's not your turn and they're getting shot at, it might help to make them slightly more survivable.
Exactly. And then if you do add the Rav Shoot as part of their war gear, they gain the ability to deep strike, as we mentioned before. This can be super good for doing secondaries, things of the like. Their actual abilities, though, they do have 2. And this is, again, new as of the most recent balanced data slate. Fearsome Assault is at the start of the fight phase. Each enemy unit in engagement range of 1 or more units with this ability must take a battle shock test, subtracting 1 from that test. This, as much as battle shock sucks, this is actually a really good ability because you can just shove these guys onto an objective and force your enemy to take battle shock tests, which, if they fail, could flip that objective. But subtracting 1 from that test is huge too. That's not inconsequential.
Yeah, it can make a big difference. And like you just said, you can take an objective by force. Even if the combat doesn't go well, if they failed that battle shock, you could still have it, even if they have more models on the objective than you.
Exactly.
So it's very much a, this is mine now, you can't have it.
Yeah.
Type of ability.
Especially important when you pair it with their Terror Troops aura, because that allows them to look at enemy units that are not monsters or vehicles that are within 3 inches of themselves and subtract 1 from their objective control. So even if you don't get the battle shock test to go through, you can say take a unit of guardsmen or standard intercessors that have 2 OC and make that 1 very quickly. And all of a sudden you've balanced the score, and if they're battle shocked, it's down to 0, so it's even better. You can very easily flip objectives with something like this.
Yeah, and that really shows like what the whole design of this unit is. It is deep strike in, cause a problem, get onto an objective, and take it by force. Whether the enemy wants it to happen or not, you are going to be taking that objective.
Yep.
And it really plays into that objective monkey secondary missions role that these guys fill so well.
Exactly. Storm hostile objective. Reavers are the squad to do it.
Yes.
And it's interesting because it's not most abilities like Fearsome Assault that talk about enemy units within engagement range. They usually say pick one. Fearsome Assault is each enemy unit within engagement range, which is so vastly different from everything else because when you choose each, that means everybody. So everybody is taking a battle shock test, and you could potentially take that objective from having 10 OC on it to 0 real fast.
Moving next into infiltrators, their keywords, infiltrator, in the name, I guess. Grenade and smoke, like we talked about. It's pretty standard with what these Phobos units have. They're able to deploy kind of wherever they want, or at least move around in some way or another, whether it's infiltrators or scouts.
Yes.
They have grenades, because why not? And the smoke, survivability, causing some shenanigans on the battlefield, making it a little more difficult on the enemy. And their big ability, they only have one, is Omniscramblers, which basically enemy units that are coming out of reserves have to be 12 inches away from this unit, not 9, which is pretty, 3 inches is a lot, all right? It's a very, very consequential amount.
In this case, yes.
But it does make a huge difference for screening and preventing deep strikes or reserves from coming into certain areas.
Exactly.
You can really cause some problems by having that extra deny range.
Yes, this ability right here is why they are 20 points more per 5 models. Because they set up effectively up to a 30-inch deep strike bubble in diameter that just...
Even if someone does deep strike that 12 inches away from them, there's almost no way that they're going to be able to charge on that same turn and try and hurt these guys.
Exactly.
It's just not happening.
Not going to be able to do it.
The infiltrators, the cost is all right there. It's in this ability.
It's hugely impactful, and you don't really think about it, but then when you're trying to score a secondary that requires you to be deep struck behind enemy lines, or when you're trying to take out another unit that's nearby that you're thinking, oh, I really need that to die, and you can't deep strike exactly where you want to because of an infiltrator squad, it makes a huge difference, and it really disrupts your gameplay. It's almost like a built-in gotcha moment. Exactly. Because it's not something you're going to think about all too often. I mean, I guess that's the difference between casual and competitive play, is knowing all those abilities by heart, but it can really disrupt things. Really, this kind of encapsulates for me their entire role in lore, because the whole point of them is to intercept Vox traffic, disrupt Vox signals, make it difficult for the enemy to mass communicate and really effectively mass combat power. So this is exactly that. You're not allowing the enemy to really get anywhere nearby. They just can't really mount the same effectiveness of an offensive if they're not able to communicate, and that really kind of shows up in this ability, and I really like how they did this. I agree. So the last one we're going to talk about is the incursors. Keywords, Scout 6, grenades and smoke, kind of the same that we've been talking about with a lot of these units. Their big ability is the multi-spectrum array. And it reads, after this unit has shot, select one unit hit by this unit in those attacks. Whenever friendly Adeptus Astartes keyword units target that unit, they do so at a +1 to hit. To me, this fits the lore pretty darn well. It does.
These guys are information and data collectors that help benefit everyone else on the battlefield with them. They send up that information. It pops up on every other Space Marine's HUD. like, boom, marked. They are highlighted in yellow. They're going to get bopped, and they're easier to hit because of it.
Exactly. I think +1 to hit is so consequential when you have a unit that's hitting on threes
Mm-hmm.
because it takes you from hitting most of the time to hitting almost all the time.
Yeah,
And you really, especially if it's a unit that you really need dead, that can be the difference between it dying and it staying alive. Having +1 to hit is genuinely one of the best things that you can get for any
yeah,
army.
yeah. It's super, super helpful. And
I will always take +1 to hit when I can get it.
oh, of course, of course. And especially with these guys, like it fits. It fits the lore. It's pretty flavorful. Like I give thumbs up on this one.
Yep, I appreciate this ability very much for its connection to the lore. I think
Yeah.
generally the Phobos do a pretty good job of connecting to the lore. They do a lot better than I expected going
Yeah,
into this.
I agree. Like I knew that they would like, oh yeah, but before reading and because I knew the tabletop pretty okay. The lore I kind of knew, but before I was reading it, I was like, yeah, they'll kind of fit. I mean, reavers are reavers. They, cause havoc and they commit crimes of various kinds. And snipers are snipers.
Yeah,
How like they'll probably fit. But then we went through this and they fit pretty darn good.
yeah. And I mean, I don't personally read a lot of Primaris era lore.
Me either.
The best I've done is I read the Dark Imperium trilogy. There is one
Hmm.
part, I believe it's in Plague War, where they are launching a massive scale offensive against a city on one of the planets that the Death Guard control. And it's from the viewpoint of one of the captains, and he's mentioning, seeing all the different types of units across the battlefield, the Gravis aggressors going in and, just weathering storms of fire while dishing out massive hate storms from their Boltstorm gauntlets. Or he talks about one squad, I believe it was of Reavers, that were, slinking through the shadows and finding cultists and slitting their throats. Like, they that it seems like it fits very well with that kind of motif. Moving
Yeah.
through the shadows and still, getting to your target and inflicting mass damage before moving on quickly. So it definitely, from the very limited lore that I've actually read that has this in it, it does seem to make a lot of sense for most of them. I think
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
specific though, let's talk eliminators first because it's kind of the order we've been going in.
Yeah.
I would say they do a pretty good job. They're a sniper.
Yeah.
They do pretty all right. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's bad. I think that they just kind of do pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, the one point I think against them would be just the bolt sniper has a little bit low of a strength.
Yeah,
It could do with being slightly higher.
yeah.
You wanted to
Especially,
pack a big punch. You wanted to really have a good shot at hitting
yeah,
and wounding.
especially because like when you're talking about those higher up commanders, they're gonna
Mhm.
be either T4 or higher. So when you're wounding
Yeah.
on fours or higher, that doesn't feel great.
No,
So
it
it's
does
just
not.
it doesn't feel awesome. And the fact that the last fusils don't have precision, that also kind of hurts them a little bit. Just because, like, yeah, you have this thing that can take out that big commander, but that big commander isn't even able to be shot because you don't have precision.
Yeah, and I think that is due to balancing, I think, if we're
It
being honest.
absolutely is.
But like as a Death Watch player, I have the ability to pull a shenanigan and give my entire army precision for a whole turn if I really.
Yeah, so you
So
can
like
just cheat and go around it.
I have workarounds. So, to me it's not super consequential, but I think across the board, in a way it does balance it. It almost forces you to choose if you want that unit to be focused on maybe smaller vehicles or like lone op type things
Yeah.
that there isn't a bodyguard unit, or if you want them to be picking characters out of bodyguard units. And you just have to make that call whenever you're assembling this unit.
Exactly. And I do really like it. I do really think that they encapsulate the role of a Vanguard sniper really, really well with their
they do.
reposition under fire ability, the fact that they have stealth and infiltrate. Like, they really feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that their weapons were a little bit better for taking out those tougher commanders, but I get why they aren't. I'm not going to hold it too much against Eliminators when we get to our final assessments here, but I do wish they were a little bit better.
But they also, I mean, yes, that does suck a little bit. However, they have shenanigans that are amazing.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
You have the stealth, you have the infiltrate, you have the shoot and move. Oh no, we lose the ability to charge. Like we said earlier, if you're charging with your snipers, you're in a really bad situation.
Exactly.
So, and even if you do need to get into combat with them, they have an okay like Space Marine melee. So there's only the one detractor for them, being that they could use a little bit higher strength or that precision keyword for the last Fusils, but
yeah,
I think they're pretty solid.
I think they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Moving into Reavers, they're so back.
So back.
The December 2024 data slate really just...
It makes them worth it.
They feel worth it now. Exactly. I think in terms of how they relate to the lore, they fixed the things that we had a problem with. They really feel like terror troops. They feel like they're meant to go in and shock and awe, make some real pain happen.
Yeah, well, yeah. And they can do such a good job at flipping objectives, getting secondaries out of the way, doing whatever. They are a huge utility, and they do it by force, especially now with that 1 AP on their melee.
Yep.
Like, they're back, baby.
I love it. I think they're decent enough in a 5-man squad, especially when you're using them with Deep Strike with the grav shoots. 10-man is great for flipping objectives, but I wouldn't send them at the center objective just because they are still pretty squishy. They are still Space Marines that have pretty squishy profiles. So if you're pushing them up to a side objective, you're probably going to flip it pretty well.
And, I mean, that's their whole thing is they're not going to be in the middle of the fight. They're going to be, causing problems elsewhere to loosen up pressure and take what they can by force, which it fits really well for them. Ignoring the terrain and their movement is really helpful and has a ton of utility. We keep saying it, but just bounce around, get where you need to go, whether you're deep striking, charging, whatever you're doing. These guys have everything for movement that they could want. The grapnel launcher helps them out so much.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Again, I'm bringing up one more negative. They don't have shock grenades.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way you could possibly work that into the game is when you, if it were a thing, is they use the shock grenade and then you pocket sand your opponent so that they're blind for a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe another instance of giving, hey, guess what? -1 to hit or something like that.
Yeah, or you actually, the person you're playing against, you just pocket sand them.
Yeah.
And they are blinded so that you can do whatever you want for a second.
I was a little bit disappointed. They had this super cool thing in the lore, and then they don't get access to it on the tabletop.
Yeah, I think if they did have that type of thing, an extra ability or something, they would be a little too overpowered.
Oh, they'd be absolutely broken, and they'd probably get points-wise. It's just something that I kind of wish that they would have had. I think that they did okay. I think they did pretty good with them for the most part. Yeah. Infiltrators are still my favorite, though.
Yeah, they're pretty great. The Deep Strike Disruption is so good.
And especially the fact that they actually took into account that little tidbit about them being Medicaid trained by giving them a 6 feel no pain. That just... I don't know why, but that was this is the attention to detail I want when you're building units. That's what I'm looking for.
It's a very fun little like, oh, nice.
Yeah,
That fits the lore. That's good
it's
flavor.
a
I like
great
that.
little tidbit, and the comms rate too, because it's like they're feeding intel, and they're disrupting enemy communications, get you more CP. Again, it's
Yeah.
that attention to detail for this specific unit that they really looked at it and made it reflect very well.
Like the only things that really like count against them would be like the melee and the shooting, but really that's not the purpose of these guys. They're
No.
gonna be your information gatherers. They're gonna be your deep strike disruption. If you're trying to use them with like your primary goal is to shoot and fight with them, you're probably not playing them quite right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it, you can't count too much against them for that.
No. And I really love that they kind of played into that electronic warfare spy theme.
Yeah,
They played
yeah,
very well into it. Much better than they did with the incursors. I.
yeah,
They tried, but like the okay positives first. I love that they gave them the +1 to hit as if they're gathering info and feeding it to a battle network.
yes.
I think that was
That is
awesome.
really good. That's awesome. Yeah.
Everything else sucks.
I mean, sustained hits on the combat blades, not bad.
Not bad, but when are you really going to be relying on a Space Marine infantry unit that's not a Terminator or an Assault Intercessor or something that has dedicated power fists and chain swords to really do
Yeah,
much in melee for you?
yeah. I totally agree. It does give them a little bit of survivability.
It
Um,
does, but again, like I don't want to be too harsh on them. They do fit very well with their +1 to hit, but it just feels like they needed something else, and they needed the Haywire Mind to actually do something like the Machine Spirit Banishment that it's supposed to do.
yes. Like positives, the +1 to hit is good. I think the shooting abilities with the Norse cover and assault like fits good from a lore perspective. Their shooting isn't amazing, but it does fit because they are information and data gatherers. They know the battlefield inside and out. They have the ability to do that. That fits. Really, the only detractor, and it's a huge one, is the Haywire Mine. They're a big toss up, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
that, some parts are pretty good, and other parts are really lacking, and it feels like it's missing. So
yeah. Well, in that case, I think it's time we assign some scores here. Um,
yeah, let's do it.
let's start with eliminators. How do you feel? What do you think they should be getting?
So eliminators are currently in my list. I love them with a passion, and I think they fit pretty darn well. Um, there's we talked about it. The biggest detractor is their weapons. They leave a little to be desired, whether it's precision on the las fusel or it's higher strength on the bolt sniper. But with their abilities, in the notes you wrote shoot and scoot. I love that. I'm going to start saying that. Um, but having infiltrate, having stealth, having the old shoot and scoot is awesome for them.
Yeah.
I would put them somewhere in between like an 8 to an 8.5, somewhere in there is what I'm thinking.
Now that we've talked a little bit more about them, because initially I'd been thinking about the 8 range too, but really
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that we took away from them was the strength of their weapons not being great, or the fact that they don't have precision on the last fusils, which in all reality I think kind of makes more sense. I'm willing to put them closer to a 9 if you are.
I'd say like an 8.7.
8.7. All right, we have our first non half decimal place rating. I think that I'll
Yeah, like they're a little shy of the 9
yeah, I
in
don't
my
think they're
mind, but
quite on
they're
par.
really strong. Like they're solid.
Yeah, I don't think
They
they've
match
earned the
well.
9 yet, but I think that they do a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Reavers.
I was
Um,
initially a little bit on the lower side with the Reavers, but I think I'm still going to move these ones up because we've talked about it a little bit more, and I really can't find as much of a fault other than the fact that Battleshock sucks.
well,
And that's not even their fault.
Battle Shock does suck, but on the chance that it goes off, it does have a lot of utility, especially if you're on an objective in a fist fight.
Exactly.
So
So
like it fits the role pretty darn like the lore, it fits pretty darn well. Battle Shock mechanics are just really iffy. So
mhm.
like 90% of the time, that ability is not going to matter, unfortunately. But when it hits, it'll make a big difference.
And I think that
So
does come down to the game design. So really, I don't want
yeah.
to penalize the Reavers for GW's bad game design.
How dare you say such a thing?
But
No,
like,
I agree with you though.
I don't think they deserve less than an eight.
No,
But I don't
I
think
would
they
put
deserve more
them.
than an eight and a half.
Yeah, I was thinking like an 8.3, 8.4. Like they're good. They have a ton of utility, but that one ability does it is a big drawback because, like I said, 90% of the time it's effectively useless.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'd be willing to say eight three is about right.
Okay. Let's do that.
We'll call it
8.3 for the Reavers.
yeah, we're all sorts of funky decimal places today.
Yes, we are
Moving into the
getting it down to a
infiltrators.
science.
These are still my favorites of all of them,
Mhm.
just because they really seem to encapsulate their battlefield role. I would say better than the Eliminators do, even though the Eliminators do a very good job. I think
Mhm.
electronic warfare is a very difficult concept to show on the tabletop, and I think that they
Yeah.
managed to do it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they do encapsulate the rule really well. Having
Yeah.
that deep strike denial.
Their comms array having the 5-up command point regen seems nice as
Mhm.
long as you're targeting them with a stratagem.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I'd be
I
willing.
think they're pretty solid.
Yeah, I'd be willing to give them a nine. I think.
Yeah, I would agree. A 9 feels like they just got to it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that incursors are still my least favorite.
I think you're hung up on the haywire mind not being able to disrupt machine
Oh, I
spirits
absolutely
accurately
am
because
I can
because
make a unit of
that would be
capacity with
so cool. I think you're being a little too harsh about just that one thing.
I don't know. I don't think it drops them that far, but it's just personally, it's just a disappointment.
It is. It's a big disappointment. But when you look at what their battlefield role is supposed to be, highlighting the enemy and knowing what's where and relaying that information, the mine isn't the primary purpose. It does suck that it's not what it could be.
Yeah,
I totally agree. But we can't reduce them so much because of that. Because the other stuff they do pretty good.
yeah. I was very shocked to see that their melee is actually better than almost everything else on this list, apart from Reavers.
Yeah. Well, and that goes to the lore where they know so much about the enemy that they can fight so effectively.
Yeah, I think overall they
Um,
do a good job with the Oculus Bolt carbines,
mhm.
giving that +1 to hit. I really do like that. Feels good for talking like that coordinated command net.
The only detractor is that haywire mine,
Yeah,
but everything else they do well.
I don't think I could justify giving them better than an eight, but I am biased again because of that haywire mine.
I'd say somewhere between like a 7, 8, and an 8,
I think
somewhere in
we
that range.
I think we could settle on a solid eight for this one
Okay, yeah,
because
because
they do a better job than what we believed intercessors to do back when we first did them. They do a better job in their battlefield role there, so I can't justify giving them below 7.5, but I also feel like they do a pretty good job with what they have, so I think 8 is a pretty solid spot to put them.
so I
This has been
think that puts us at our final ranking complete for
yes, it
these
does.
guys.
This has been a very fun episode. I really enjoyed putting this one together. I knew nothing about Phobos units coming into this, apart from they wore stealthier armor.
Yeah, they're sneaky guys.
It's really cool to see how much variety there is within their ranks and all the different battlefield roles that they fill. And so I think that generally this I wouldn't say this is my favorite episode that we've done, but I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I had a ton of fun with this one. I mean, you definitely did a lot of the legwork in getting us ready for this. It's been hectic for both of us lately, but I am really happy to be back, and I think this was a great one for us to come back with.
Yeah. And
So,
hopefully we'll be able to get back on a semi-regular release schedule so that
Yeah.
all of you that are out there listening can really plug back in and we can get back into what we were doing that we were having so much fun with. So
Yeah.
hopefully with this new year, everything will be kind of set up and we'll be ready to go. So thank you all for listening. Unless you have anything else, Riley, I think we are good to go.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you, everyone who has been following us so far. We really appreciate it. I know it's been kind of a long break, but like Ethan just said, we're going to try and get back to a semi-regular schedule. And please, if you have any suggestions or things you want to see, let us know, because yes, we took a break, but talking about Space Marines can still get boring a little bit. We want to change it up. So, yeah, just please let us know. I'll, like if you enjoyed this. If you didn't like, uh, be nice, but tell us what we could do better.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it. We'll wrap it here.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions, feel free to let us know. Thank you for everything. All the YouTube pleasantries. Thank you, everybody.